Our big question tonight is the following. Do you look forward or do you look back here when it comes to trying to get the people's vote in November? Presidential candidates have got a choice between those two themes. Should they harp on past failures and foibles or provide proposals for the future? Is it all hope or explanations as to why we're here? Which path is going to get your vote? Joining us to talk politics and more, Greg Ball, New York State Senator, and I find one of the most interesting legislators around because you can't always predict the vote here. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, always interesting and always maddening, our senior political correspondent, bitter Capitals fan, and so much more, Andrew Whitman. All right, let's start here with a check of the numbers as we sit and address you this Friday evening, or in my case, stand. We're just 186 days from the general election. The president, he's got a lead. It's been pretty consistent this week, a little over 3 points, and that is the polls that Andrew crunches together to give us a composite average here. But the election, of course, isn't going to be decided by the polls or even by the national percentages. As we all learned in civics and social studies, we elect presidents based on the states they win in the Electoral College. Sometimes, as we know, it can be funny math. And when you look back at the race that way, it may not be as close as the numbers showed, depending on your perspective. And Andrew, you've been digging here and looking at red and blue and putting together the map and juggling them around. How does it look right now?
You know, it doesn't look as too close to call as you would think from that snapshot that we take of the poll numbers every single day, Rich. A couple of weeks ago, we focused in on President Obama's path to re-election this fall, but the road for Mitt Romney may be a bumpier one. Before we look at this fall, we have to turn the clock back, though, to the final numbers from the 2008 election. This is the template from which both campaigns are going to operate this year. For President Obama, re-election is as easy as just keeping all the blue states blue, though that may be harder to do this time around. For Mitt Romney, the 2012 race is all about changing colors on this map, turning as much blue into red as he can, though turning some states would be a lot more valuable than others. In fact, the Washington Post reported today that the Romney team has identified 6 states that it considers to be just about make or break for their candidate, or something close to it. They include 3 states that have traditionally voted Republican but went for Obama in 2012. That's on the left-hand side, Indiana, 2008, Indiana, North Carolina, and Michigan. And then on the right, 3 more typically toss-up states, particularly in recent elections, Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. That's the good news for Camp Romney. The bad news is that other than Indiana, there is fresh polling data for each of those states, and they are not breaking the way Mitt needs them to. First, Virginia. It elected an extremely conservative governor in 2009. Well, that's Virginia is 51-44 for Romney. And as we move on to North Carolina, you can see the numbers there. We don't have poll numbers, but these are favorable numbers. And look, President Obama, 21 points more favorable in North Carolina than Mitt Romney. And comparing favorables to unfavorables, Obama is a +7 in North Carolina. Romney is a -15. Florida, typically a toss-up. It is again today, as you see the numbers there. Also, Ohio in toss-up territory right now, as we check the numbers in the Buckeye state. And then there's Pennsylvania. It has been a toss-up state in 2000 and 2004, though it went big for Obama in 2008. It looks ready to go big for Obama again this year. He is up by 8 in the latest Q poll, Rich. And unless Mitt Romney can figure out a way to stem that tide and bring back the numbers in Virginia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, you can just about write off his chances of getting to 270 electoral
Are the
votes.
reasons different for every state? Virginia, I mean, I heard the demos have changed. A lot more government workers are now living in Virginia than in past, and Pennsylvania. Or is it the same? Is it the labor vote here has been turned sour? You
know, you're getting some movement in terms of people moving in and out of the different states, but Virginia with the federal workers, not as big a deal. The federal workforce has actually shrunk in recent years. The number of union voters in places like Pennsylvania aren't as big as they used to be either. So it appears to be, you know, held out preferences from the 2008 election, or maybe it's just not enjoying what they're seeing from Mitt Romney so far. Don't exactly know why, but that may be an even bigger problem for Mitt Romney.
So let me ask you, you know for sure something's going to happen both on the political side. Somebody's going to say something stupid, somebody's going to get in trouble, and something will happen, whether it be national, economic, or international, something out of anyone's control in the campaign trail that will shape votes, and there'll be changes. That said, what's your pulse right now? And every electorate's different. Your constituency is obviously different than something in North Carolina and Virginia or Ohio, but as we sit here now in May, if the election were today, you think the president wins re-election?
Look, we have 6 months. It's not going to be held today. And the other thing that I think you're seeing reflected in those numbers is the fact that the Republicans just got through a pretty bruising primary. It was pretty tough. And you had folks like, you know, some of these other candidates out on the national stage that did not place the Republican Party in the best light. Mitt Romney is an entirely different candidate. He went through a primary without going all the way to the hard right. He was very strategic to make sure that he didn't go all the way to the hard right. He's perfectly positioned now to present a more pragmatic vision to the rest of America. When you look at favorable, unfavorable, he's a less known quantity than the President of the United States, so I'm not worried about some of those numbers. And I think,
you know, the argument, though, is by some that he did go hard right, whether it be on issues of immigration here, on some of the culture war stuff that they got back into, that even if he tries to pivot back to the middle, that'll play into the biggest criticism, the Etch-a-Sketch, that'll say whatever he's got to get elected.
I think if you really look at his positions on the issues compared to some of the other candidates that went to the right of Attila the Hun, Governor Romney did not. And on immigration and some of these other, on immigration specifically, he certainly is on the right of that issue, but quite honestly, we're a right-of-center country where a lot of people will agree with him on that issue. Thank God, you know, unlike some of the candidates we're talking about outlawing aspirin and other things, Mitt wasn't there, and we got 6 months to go.
You know, the senator is very accurate in terms of pointing out, Richard, and I'm going to explain why. We're 6 months out from this because we have to be careful with polls that are really just snapshots in time. You mentioned North Carolina. Chances are Obama is not going to win North Carolina again. He won by 1%.
I know you're right. 6 months is a long time.
With
but
a super
people
high
got to figure out
turnout.
where to spend money.
Exactly.
People got to also figure out
true.
also candidates on the ground, how much are they going to wrap their arms around the party nominee, or how much are they going to run to the local issues?
You're right,
know?
but only point I'm making is that he won North Carolina, Obama, with 1%.
Yeah.
And that was with a super high maximum turnout.
Right.
It's not going to be there this time around.
Let's get to how they might position themselves and the branding of each of the candidates. Now, the map certainly, as everybody at the table says, can shift day to day, let alone month to month. But the political ads that are coming out from both campaigns give us an idea, at least, and some of it surprises me at least, on how they're going to try and sell themselves to the American public. Take a look at this one. This one comes from the Obama campaign.
For the 5th straight month, the U.S. economy lost jobs, 324,000 so far this year.
A meltdown in the mortgage industry.
This is the biggest point drop that has ever been seen in a day.
The worst financial collapse since the Great Depression.
This is cataclysmic. American workers were laid off in numbers not seen in over 3 decades.
Whoever wins in November is going to come into office in January facing a deep recession, facing trillions of new liabilities.
This is a once-in-a-half century, probably once in a century type of event.
On the day Barack Obama took office, America had already lost 4.4 million jobs. An economic disaster, the worst in a generation. Some said America's best days were behind us. But like America, he dug deep, fought back, and never lost faith in our ability to meet the challenge. The president's stimulus plan saved up to 4.2 million jobs, including teachers, construction workers, police and firefighters working to build a stronger America.
All right, so we'll talk about that in a second, but put it first in context with what's coming from the Romney campaign.
You see, we Democrats have a very different measure of what constitutes progress in this country. We measure progress by how many people can find a job that pays the mortgage. Whether you can put a little extra money away at the end of each month so you can someday watch your child receive her college diploma.
All right, let's go around the table. Dom, I'll start with you. Which do you think was a more effective spot?
The Romney one. I think they're both effective. They're very effective. What the Obama spot is saying is, not on my watch, don't blame me, it was the guy before me. Very effective. Reminding America that, hey, all of these stats that are doom and gloom, they didn't just happen under President Obama, they happened under the Republican president before me. That is something Obama's going to have to do because he traveled America selling hope.
Well, Andrew, you a little surprised, in, again, how they start's not how they're going to finish here in terms of, it tells a story. They're going to do past, then they're going to do present, then they're going to do future. I get that. But a lot of people thought he was just going to talk about the here and now and what comes next. You surprised that he went back here? I mean, more than half of his commercial showed the picture of George W. Bush, Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. No, I'm not surprised that he went back because that's what he's going to have to try to do. I mean, he's going to be, for an incumbent running for re-election, he's going to focus less on his record in office than most presidents would, and he's going to focus on the conditions at the time that he came into office. Two other points. One, I think it's hard to compare these two ads because Romney's is a negative ad against Obama, Obama's is a positive ad for Obama.
That's also negative against George W. Bush.
Or a negative ad against George W. Bush, but they're really not comparable because one's a positive and one's a negative. And the other thing is they're both backwards-looking ads. Neither one of them is promising you anything about what's going to happen from 2012 to 2016,
well,
which I think speaks volumes.
You're
also.
the campaign manager for Mitt Romney. He says, all right, do we make a spot where we just try and make Barack Obama own this economy? Is that the best strategy, or is he supposed to tell everybody, listen, it's 8% right now, 8.1% unemployment, I'm going to get you to 6%, and this is how?
I think for President Obama to be running for re-election on the theme of it could be worse is not really all that effective. And you know, at the end of the day, we're in a tough economy, but there is good news out there. There are people out here in this country creating jobs, the business people. I mean, Ronald Reagan's theme of It's Morning in America again, and talking about hope and optimism is something that I think is fundamentally important. You know, Governor Romney, on just the credibility of the issues, I think has to come out and say, look, I may not be the funniest guy. You know, this president is an amazing campaigner. He is something from another world. I mean, his ability. And I think Governor Romney has to say, look, you know, I may not be the entertainer, I may not be a funny guy, but I can get this country back to work, and I have the private sector experience to do what President Obama hasn't done. And I think it's going to be very interesting.
I definitely think it'll be interesting.